So I'm going to start with trying something new. And a couple of hours ago, a tweet war, if you like, started out between Elon Musk and Vitalik Buterin. It's here on the screen. And Elon is asking, what should be developed on Ethereum? And Vitalik, that's the founder of Ethereum, so that's like Satoshi Nakamoto of Ethereum, says a couple of different ideas. You like this one?
Looks great so far.
So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to list up a couple of them, and I want you to say afterward what you say is your kind of main thing. So from Vitalik's list of 11 things, what is your main one? Okay? So you need to kind of keep close attention. Okay. Topics. A globally accessible financial system. 2, identity. Sign in with Ethereum instead of sign in with Facebook. 3, all sorts of registries should publish on-chain. 4, experimenting with new forms of human organizational structures. 5, all sorts of micropayments, use cases via payment channels. 6, markets for personal data. 7, crypto economics for preventing spam. And this continues here. Clever. Okay. Crypto economics, micro payment schemes to reward publishers, testing ground for new market signs, P2P marketplaces, identity, reputation and credit system, and lastly, decentralized DNS like the ENS. Did you choose one? You're ready to start at one side and go through and say what your main thing is? It's hard.
I'm still in shock that this is even happening. I've been like, whoa, when worlds collide. If you told me 3 years ago that we were going to wind up with Vitalik and Elon Musk openly discussing the future of the universe on Twitter, it's entirely improbable, and I refuse to believe it.
I'm gonna type in your tweets right back from Oslo Blockchain Day, so that Vitalik and Elon Musk is up to date on our thoughts. I think that's important.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, this is amazing. When Vitalik brings out the A game, his stuff is incredibly dense. It's just like tweet-length summaries of entire theses.
Katie, you want to start with picking one?
I can, if you want off the hook.
Okay.
I think for me the most interesting one that's not on the list, and my friends...
Is that legal?
Yeah, but that hasn't been mentioned here, and it's probably out of respect for the security people who cringe whenever someone mentions this idea, is voting. But think about the impact around the world of having transparent, authentic, auditable, legitimate elections. Think about all the negative knock-on effects, right, of all this election illegitimacy. Accessibility too, right? The fact you can't vote using a mobile device in many countries. I don't know, that's not on the list, but if the principles of blockchain can be securely applied to voting, huge game changer for the world. Huge one.
Perfect. Leo?
It has already been done in Norway.
In Norway?
Yeah, in 2011, 12, 13, and 14, we conducted pilot digital elections in Norway. And the way they handled the anonymous vote with verified identity was deeply inspired by the Bitcoin white paper.
Interesting. And there's something going on in Asia, too. I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it Vietnam or... Yeah.
I guess I can interject and say that it worries me. Part of Polkadot is to have on-chain voting and on-chain governance. I'm very much behind this idea of voting and being on-chain. But when you're voting on a blockchain, you're not really voting at the national level. And for the national level and governments, I'm still happy to have everything paper-based. I know people talk about hacking and social hacking and Cambridge Analytica and all that sort of crap, but at the same time, I still feel there's less attack vectors for a paper-based vote. And having previously worked in information security, I know there's a shit ton of attack vectors with computers. And so if voting was done at the national level electronically, even with a blockchain, it would still worry the hell out of me. I'm not sure we're there yet.
Perfect. Yeah. You agree?
Yeah, I
Charles agrees.
In principle, yes, voting on the blockchain sounds good, but I think putting this into practice won't happen, because there's going to be too much risk that humans either don't think about, or implementation details that will go awry that will make this whole thing collapse and be more corruptible than the existing paper-based system.
And in Norway, we did actually not go for the system. It's now not being used. Isn't that correct?
No, they didn't carry on after the pilot due to lack of political will. And I think also important factor to mention here is that there is basically the decision makers or the lawmakers doesn't really have a good incentive to want this.
John, you need to ask Elon and Vitalik whether we'll get to Mars first or have secure electronic voting, which is going to happen first.
Mars.
Probably Mars.
Asteroid mining.
Surely you need the secure electronic voting for managing and governing your Mars colony. I mean, blockchain is how you keep track of like where the wrenches are and how much oxygen is in the tanks, and who's got the right to pull how much power out of the solar panels because it's a dust storm and that stuff is scarce. Right? So this looks like the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I'm gonna. So for me, the really interesting piece is the international aid piece with this kind of technology, especially when you're dealing with high levels of corruption, and the amount of aid that gets lost across borders due to corruption is huge. Appreciate it's a very like rosy picture of we want the world to be a better place, but for us, it's a big picture is about bridging that gap between humanity and tech. And I think this technology does have the ability in many, many ways to enable human beings to be better. And for me, that international aid piece is a really interesting piece.
But then again, that would just be like a result of having, for example, like a global financial system, right? I mean, you would need to have some way to like facilitate those things. And I mean, so of course, if I had to pick one working at Maker, I would have to pick like global financial system.
Probably the same for me.
Huh?
Yeah, probably the same for me. I mean, because it covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah. It will be like the infrastructure that like a lot of these things would have to be built upon, right? Because I mean, of course, like if you need to deal with like aid, for example, and we have had discussions with like some of the largest organizations in the world dealing with these things, such as like the World Bank. But like the whole issue, and it's still that like you can create all these like pilots about like how will we transfer funds, but if the funds you're transferring will not be, you know, like inherently like better than what we have now, it doesn't matter, right? Because you would still find ways to be able to corrupt it.
I don't think it's just about money, though. I think there's more to it than just the financial piece. So there's an organisation out there that provides a platform to connect people in those countries that need international aid, that have ideas to fix problems that they have in their countries, to connect them to financial aid, but also to developers, to advisors, because they don't have the stuff on the ground. So yeah, absolutely.
Sure, but then again, they would have to pay those developers. They would have to pay those people. I mean, money is just like a facilitator.
You don't need
for
a whole new financial system for that, right? Right. You need a payment platform ultimately, and so that's just I don't know. I think there's multiple facets to when you talk about international aid, right? Financial services is one small part of it, but there is a huge range of things.
I want to get Silvia into this discussion also.
No, I have, thanks. No, I think to me this is a little bit like, first of all, he has the opportunity and the privilege to state so many things, and then among some things like completely new organizational structures and new democracy and new economics, he says stickers and badges. And, it's a technology that's almost too powerful because it can be used to too many things, and we sound like those 16 blind people that are trying to describe an elephant. Everybody describes the part that makes sense to them and the especially relevant. And I think blockchain is one of those things that AI, if you think about the amount of science fiction that has been written related to AI, it's immense. And we've thought those scenarios really well through for many, many years. With blockchain, there is so little long thinking. It's new. And we're trying to figure it out as we are implementing on the ground. And I think then the only way to go about figuring out what it really can be useful for is to go Katie's way, and let's see what works and let's see what sells, and and I think it'll be too slow if we're waiting for the regulators to tell us what's really good or not good, and because they are going to just be super risk averse. they can't allow themselves to allow technology that, we saw what happens with Trump and Cambridge Analytica and so on. So everybody who has the right to say no will, by instinct, be super risk averse. And I think we need to figure out who wants this now, and start doing it without trying to have some kind of top-down priority list.
That makes sense, but still, can you choose what part of that elephant makes most sense to you?
I think it depends on who you are. And, I was on a board of a big international bank, and I wasn't even allowed to touch anything related to this. So for very good reasons. So I think we have so many different aspects of what's... To me, maybe the decentralized aspect and the transparency, smart contracts are the sort of blockchain I like most.
But I think that this is like a really good like showcase of like why this is so amazing, right? Because we're like a bunch of people here, and all of us have like widely different like passions and ideas, like what we think it should be used for. So that also just means like we cannot really have like a top-down list that's like general for everyone, right? Because all of us are going to put a lot of energy and effort into specific products that make sense for us. So we'll have like a bunch of like very passionate and driven people driving their own project, how they think it should be done. So whether you focus like, I don't really get what you would focus on, but like whether you focus on like financial inclusion, like financial structures we do, or like building out like facilities for these local projects to help each other, that actually doesn't really matter too much in the end, right? Because we just have a bunch of people who will like drive their passion out into the world. I think this is actually like a showcase of like why it's so amazing.
Yeah. No, so I have played with smart contracts, and I've been playing with transparency of supply chain and things that can prove, where the product comes from and who's been dealing with it in what way. Not just the financial aspects of the value chain, but really the whole story. I think those things are possible to sell. I've also been using some of this for like real-time audit and automation of some of that. I think that's amazing. But again, I think that you're actually right. We should all do work on problems that we are really passionate about, and then see how this technology can solve them in completely new ways.
Now we're going to try to move on to the next question.
Oh, I was just going to say, this reminds me of mid-90s discussions about what the World Wide Web is for.
I guess
that same thing of like, it's for everything, and it turns out to be for everything.